let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining, everybody. We've got, I think, a really good talk track today. My name is Ted Ritter. I am the co-chair of the IT community of IFMA. I've been involved with IFMA since 2001. Based in Phoenix, Arizona, and we've been doing a variety of different talk tracks through the IT community since its inception, which was in the 90s, believe it or not. Our real focus is pretty singular. We try to look at how does technology support corporate real estate in FM. And the cool thing about being involved with tech all these years is technology changes about every quarter. So although we're asking how can tech support us, what we're asking specifically and how the technology has changed, the impact it's having has changed. We always want to collaborate to share best practices, case studies, and we're certainly going to do that today. Very much looking forward to the discussion. I think, one of the things I've noticed from being at a lot of different presentations and meetings is that people don't really know about communities and councils, not university. Councils are basically industry verticals. There's 16 of them. And if you're particularly interested in, airports or corporate facilities or banking or utilities, the public sector, there's a place for you where you can network with your peers across the country and across the world. Councils, as I said, are a great place for that. Communities are really set up to align with core competencies of IFMA, and there are, in fact, 7 now. And we're horizontal. The content that we produce supports the association membership across verticals. Wanted to thank our members. Going to tell the story again that pre-pandemic we were about the same size in terms of number of members, but during the pandemic we grew a little bit, but we grew exponentially geographically. Pre-pandemic, I think we had members in 14 countries. We got members in over 33 now. So I think, recognize the value of technology to help with the digitization of FM and corporate real estate, and how the heck do I optimize my facilities, whether it's dealing with the pandemic or some of the issues and challenges that we'll be talking about today. I think, really resonated when we saw that growth of geography. So what do we do? I think, we're a very active community on a national and international level. We participate in certainly all of the IFMA events, but we also participate in other industry events, Realcomm, Blueprint, Infocom, Autodesk University, to name a few. We're very closely aligned with supporting content for local chapters. We've supported multiple chapters over the years, New York, Chicago, Toronto, Dallas, LA, and Phoenix, to name a few. And we do support the IFMA Foundation and think about how we can best help pay it forward to the next generation in supporting scholarships. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Chris Lorraine, President of LandTech Consultants and our sponsor for today. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I think we've got a real good presentation to show you. Just a little bit about LandTech. LandTech is a technology-focused engineering and geospatial firm. Although we're technology focused, we're not new in the industry by any means. We've been around for 34 years, but we constantly keep up to date with technology so that we can implement solutions that provide for better construction and better operation of facilities and developments. Today, some of those technologies that we use might incorporate reality capture utilizing laser scanning, UAV drones, advanced GIS applications, and so forth that you're going to see some of today, and how we've assisted the University of Denver in integrating an indoor GIS environment. I also see that with a lot of the people that we have joining us today, that not everybody is concentrated in the higher education sector. There's a lot of K through 12, as well as a lot of private industry, um, regional, as well as state, as well as federal government. All of what we're about to show you today and discuss today can easily be incorporated within those industries as well. So with that, Ted, I think I'll turn it back to you. I think Jill's up
Um,
next.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks so much for being part of the IT community, some of the innovative work that you've been doing. A couple other introductions. Derek, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ted. Hi, everyone. Derek Lushko. I'm the GIS manager for LandTech. Given our topic at hand, I'll be doing most of the talking from the technical perspective. I oversee all of the GIS business at LandTech. One of which is our service in providing indoor GIS implementation strategy, you name it. So you'll be hearing a lot from me today, but I'll pass it back to you, Ted, and you can
Sounds
take it.
good. Thank you, Derek. Appreciate it. Um, Jill, can't thank you enough for being able to join us today. Thanks for your past participation with the Denver chapter. Would you share a little bit about yourself? Because you're kind of the star of the show, because the case study we're going through today is a lot of your teams and your good work.
Thank you very much. I am Jill Kuzada. I'm with the University of Denver. I'm a space management analyst. I've been in the industry of space management for over 20 years, in higher education for over 20 years, and in the facilities field for well over 25 to 30 years. So I've got a lot of experience, and I enjoy working in the higher education sector. DU is a very prominent university. We are a research university. We did receive our R1 status, so I'm very proud of that. And I just enjoy working with Derek on the ArcGIS Indoors project because it's really going to benefit the university.
Great. Thank you so much, Jill. Looking forward to hearing more. So Derek, before we get started with this, we want to run our first poll.
Yeah, I think Ted, before we get into it, let's run that poll and see where people stand on
Sounds
indoor
good.
GIS. So let us know, how familiar are you with the concept of indoor GIS?
I want to see if anyone says I wrote the book. I'd love to know this question. Give it another 30 seconds or so. Ooh, somebody did write the book. I want to know who that person is.
Give them a call later and consult.
Absolutely, or maybe hire them. I don't know. So not at all, about 15%, somewhat familiar, good, over half, very familiar, definitely interested to hear more about what they say, but that I wrote the book, dang. Thanks for participating. We've got a couple more polls coming up during the conversation. We definitely want this to be interactive. And feel free to, put info into the Q&A box anytime. So back to you, Derek.
Thanks, Ted. Yeah, and those results, not too surprising. It's been around for a little while, and I think that people have maybe heard the term. Some people kind of dove in a little further, so that's good though. You've got some background, and we'll fill in some gaps along the way. The way we've got this presentation structured, we're going to start the first half with going over what indoor GIS is, and the topic at hand is universities, but as Chris mentioned, right, the same approaches, the same technology, many of the same use cases can be applied across industries, whether you're a university, whether you're local government, bank, K through 12, hotel, I mean, you name it, right? It's the same type of thing. So we're going to talk about what an indoor GIS is, why is it important, how do I get one, and we'll cover that first before we get into some specifics about our project with the University of Denver. Ted, you can go to the next slide. So what is indoor GIS? If you don't know what a GIS is, it's just like a GIS, but it's for indoors. It's a complete geospatial system, and allows you to create, manage, analyze, and map indoor data, right? And doing that enables shared awareness of your facility operations, of your assets, and with that comes a number of things, right? So you get greater efficiency, you get greater resolution on access to data across different stakeholders. You gain lots of insights through that because you've got a system in place upon which you can manage that information. And I like to also say and point out, I mean, indoor GIS is a concept that has gained a lot of traction, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard the term smart campus, right? Another term and concept that's really gained a lot of popularity and adoption. And I think that indoor GIS is one of many foundational components for developing and creating that smart campus that lots of universities are striving for. Go ahead, Ted. And so continuing on that thought of what is an indoor GIS, we mentioned it earlier, and I'll say it again, we are an Esri partner. Anybody that's familiar with Esri knows some of these terms. It's pretty common, and I think it's very descriptive of what a GIS is and can be, and the same applies to an indoor GIS. It's a system of record. It can also be a system of engagement and a system of insight. So the easiest thing to remember is a system of record, right? You've got a system, a database in which you can manage your information, right? You've got it structured in a certain way. You can store it, you can maintain it. It provides structure and rules, to keep it maintained at a high level. And so that's kind of foundational, right? You're always going to do that. But I think the parts that I get most excited about are the system of engagement, right? And so what we'll be showing here is a lot of ArcGIS solutions, and by nature of those solutions, they provide for a system of engagement to a lot of different users. And those users don't have to be GIS analysts or GIS specialists or knowledgeable in that area. It gives them really a nice user interface in which to interact and explore that data that lots of different stakeholders are interested in. And then the last one is the system of insights. And so not only can you engage with that, but you can leverage that organized data, that system of engagement that allows you to interact with it to gain insights. And that can be through some simple analysis or some very complex analysis, but having an indoor GIS allows you to do all of these things and use that system in different manners as a system of record, system of engagement, and our system of insights. Go ahead, Ted. So why is it important to have an indoor GIS? Well, I think that I've got a couple of thoughts here. I'll go over them and I'll ask Jill to chime in why she thinks it's important, because it is, and that's why we're working together. But I think some of the things that come to mind for me is that the answer is different for everyone, right? Depending on who you ask around your campus, be it your university or local government, right? Depending on who you ask, the role and their responsibilities, their answer is going to be a little different. In this field, you hear people say that we spend a lot of our time indoors. Some people are a little more outdoorsy, but a lot of what we do in our day-to-day lives happens indoors. And the built world is growing in size and complexity. So mapping and understanding that indoor space is becoming ever more important. And our indoor space is a limited resource, and we know that's especially true at universities. It is a resource. It is an asset that needs to be maximized, right? get as much value out of that as possible. And the way to do that is to understand it, right? To maintain that data, understand it, work with it, and gain some insights out of it. So those are some of the key points, from my point of view as to why it's important. But Jill, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or kind of from your perspective in your role with your past experience and currently with the University of Denver, why you think it's important.
Yes, well, as you said, the built environment is important. It's always changing inside. So managing the space is critical so that you get optimal usage of it. So if you have a database, an inventory of all the room information, the floor information, the building information, you can actually analyze the space utilization and understand it a little bit better terms for, say, senior management to make changes, make decisions regarding space and the size of each department, adjacencies, and so forth. So it's a critical tool for the success of a university, because ArcGIS Indoors will actually touch base with all of the systems that work on a campus. So it's part of work order, it's part of maintenance, it's part of research, it's part of surveys, it's part of energy. So it's a critical element, and ArcGIS Indoors is really beneficial for that, because you can visually see all of these elements and you can measure them, and it's a software that you can basically develop to be what you want it to be. So it's been great, because Derek's helped with the integration of the room data so that we see and analyze every aspect of a room.
Still. Go ahead, Ted. You can go to the next slide, please. So continuing on that idea about why it's important. I mean, we talked about conceptually why it's important. I want to transition into some high-level patterns of use, right? So it's important. We understand that. How can we use it? And I'm first going to talk about this at a high level, and then we'll get into some more specific use cases. But these are maybe 4 top categories regarding key patterns of use and how an indoor GIS can be used. And I mean, the most basic, and what you do right out of the get-go, is indoor mapping, right? Everybody uses maps every single day, and the vast majority of that is probably outdoors, and maybe getting to work or getting to an appointment, that sort of thing. But the indoor mapping is kind of the next frontier, and some people have started on that adventure, and some people are beginning to, but just mapping and being able to reference maps is one pattern of use. Jill talked a lot about it, and given her experience and current role, right, space planning and management is a monumental task, no matter what field you're in, when you're dealing with a single or multiple or portfolio of facilities. And so there's lots of benefits and value to leveraging indoor GIS for that. Indoor positioning and navigation, that's another really common one that we come across a lot. Get a lot of requests for this as one of the primary use cases for indoor GIS, and that's navigating. So, some folks on the call, if you're on a university campus, chances are you've got at least a couple of old buildings, maybe some really old buildings. You definitely have some complex ones that freshmen or even upperclassmen get lost in, right? So navigating, right, improves that user experience, right, as an end user, as an employee, a student, a visitor. So that's a common pattern of use. And then the last one is one that Jill touched on a little bit, and we did with kind of the system of insights, but indoor analytics and data collection. So you've got that data, where things are, but the more related data and systems that you have integrated with your indoor GIS, the more insights you can get out of it, right? And so you can do some analytics to make better data-informed decisions, and you can enable some data collection, which is something that is another common use case. Go ahead, Ted. Yeah, and like I said, those are kind of the four high-level patterns. If you drill down maybe one more level, I've pulled out some other very common specific use cases, right? And we'll talk a little bit about some of these when we talk about the University of Denver the project as an example, because some of these are inherent in that project. But you've got your digital floor plans. I mean, Jill, how many times in our stakeholder meetings did we hear that people just want access to floor plans to know where people are and how things are set up, and people were otherwise holding on to 20-year-old printouts, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, they like to track where their people sit. And so it's very helpful to have current floor plans. Some of the individuals we spoke with had really outdated ones. And so we're updating all of the floor plans so that the system's very accurate.
Yeah, yeah. And indoor space management, I mean, that one we'll talk about a lot more, right? Because that's really the primary focus of our project together. But there are a lot of considerations there, from who managing space, as far as who occupies what space, when do they, whether or not it's a full-time occupancy, to what departments are assigned to those spaces, categorizing the use of those spaces either for internal understanding, or maybe you've got the external reporting requirements, audit requirements. There's an awful lot that goes into managing indoor space, and having an indoor GIS facilitates those workflows very well. Asset tracking is another one, right? So the space itself is an asset, and then contained within those indoor spaces are lots of assets, right? On a university campus, you've got a number of different types of equipment, be it kind of fixed systems in your gas supply for labs, or your sprinkler system, to fixed assets like maybe it's furniture or lab tables, or IT equipment, right? In this kind of digital world, right? We've got conference rooms that have much more than a desktop phone. They've got lots of IT equipment, and so having this sort of foundational indoor GIS allows you to do that asset tracking and facilitate any workflows on top of it. Locating people, right? And so that can be as simple as who's where. I mean, that's another common one, right, Jill? I mean, you've got a campus full of people, right, spread all over. Where are they? You may know what department they're in, but where do they sit? How do I get to them? Can I help people and direct them where they need to go? That's kind of from a static perspective, but you can also take that even a step further and have it be dynamic, for specific workflows. And things that come to mind there are facilities folks, right? We've got kind of an emergency facilities call. We need to get someone out there. Where are our technicians, right? Who can respond quickly? And so that's kind of a next level operations management, but you've got that indoor GIS as a backbone to it. We talked about maximizing resources. I think that goes hand in hand with location information analysis, right? When you've got your data, you've got it in a good organized fashion, and you've got a system in which you can derive insights out of, right? You really can maximize how you're using those resources, be it space or otherwise. And in GIS, we like to say everything has a location, right? And so using that location information along with other tabular data and attributes about your space or your equipment or whatever it is that you're concerned with, you can really you can leverage a lot of good information and improve your processes or your end deliverables. The last two are really real-time indoor data. So, we do at LandTech a lot of work around creating digital twins, and kind of one item there that is a pattern of use, so to speak, is bringing in real-time data feeds, right? And so when we think about indoor GIS, the first things that come to mind are things like building systems, right? HVAC systems, security systems, door locks, that sort of thing. If you've got a use case, right, you can bring in those sorts of data feeds, so you have kind of that real-time understanding and common operating picture of your facilities, of your space. Another one that has come up is occupancy, right? Occupancy sensors to understand how a space is used throughout the day, right? You may be able to make determinations and decisions about, what are the most popular spaces? What spaces do we maybe not need because they're not occupied most of the time? So that's one of the most interesting ones in my mind, to get kind of that digital twin real-time insight. And then the last one is enhanced safety and security, right? Having access to data and mapping of our indoor spaces. If you're a security or a safety person, you've got kind of that type of perspective on it. And so, we often talk to folks that are interested in having access to and sharing access with emergency personnel, right? In the event of any type of emergency where you need to understand the layout, understand what people may be, and that can be used in a static way of just understanding layout, but also in a dynamic way where you've got interactive data and dashboards that use that indoor data as a basis, but you can use real-time data collection and mobile data collection to monitor a situation and understand, that common operating picture, just from a safety and security perspective.
I'd just add on that, Derek, that combine that with the real-time indoor data, bring in your closed circuit TV cameras, get live feeds when necessary, because security is such a critical concern today. Get those live feeds within your indoor ArcGIS environment of your closed circuit TV cameras in specific areas. Access those systems that tell you if doors are locked in certain areas, so that you can see that with your live data feeds for security, as to making sure that your facilities are secure. It's a big player within the ArcGIS indoors environment.
Yeah, no, that's a good addition, Chris.
Good stuff.
I think maybe we take a minute here, Ted. I'd love to run, our next poll question now that I've, gone over kind of some of the common patterns of use. I'm interested to hear from the audience, which of the following use cases are you all interested in? And select a couple if more than one interests you.
It is multiple choice. Thanks for setting the stage so well there, Derek. It's really good.
Thanks, Ted.
We don't have we wrote the book and have already done it all as an answer, but we'll see what we get. Maybe another 10 seconds or so. Can't wait to see the results. Aha. So space planning, number 2, asset management. Interesting. Number 1, data management. Number 3, facility operations, general wayfinding a bit, and a little bit of other. Was that what you were expecting, Derek or Jill? Was that, I mean, what did you expect to see?
Well, it's good to see that people did select asset management, because it is a critical element in understanding your assets and how they're working and who's in them. And so that's kind of a broad spectrum, but that doesn't surprise me.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah, and I
Um,
don't know if I had any preconceived notions, Ted. I think it's nice to see that everyone, almost equally interested in a number of different use cases. I mean, that's consistent with, our understanding and the value of the technology, right? You've got, like I had said earlier, it means something different to everyone, right? And so you're going to have folks that are, more interested in wayfinding, right, for their, particular reasons, and then you're going to have some folks that are more interested, but in something like space management. But there is a little something for everyone, I guess. Yeah.
very good. So I'd like to jump in with a question for Jill. Is like, how did you get started? How did you set this up, and then how did you get across the goal line with budget? I mean, I think, a lot of people on the session today would be very interested to hear about a little bit of your journey at the University of Denver's.
Well, thank you, Ted. Yes, we actually last summer we conducted a survey with another system, and it was not a good experience for a lot of the people on campus that report their space, because we rely on those individuals to answer a survey about their space. So we decided to look in a different direction. And because we have the basis of ArcGIS on our campus, which I highly recommend, we've gone underneath the ground. So we track all of the utility lines and other types of data are assets that are under the ground. So we decided to look into ArcGIS Indoors. It's relatively new, but it's very exciting. And we interviewed a number of people that implemented, because that's a whole different task. So we did select it, and we selected LandTech. I spoke with our AVC and instructed him that we needed a different software for our space management, and it could be grown as we see fit in the future. So he had spoke with our campus leadership, and because LandTech did a great cost for the project, because cost is very, very important to leadership. So we decided to go with LandTech, and I'm glad we did, because they're very good to work with. They listen, they're part of all the stakeholder meetings, which we've conducted well over 35, 40. So talking with each individual department, understanding their needs as part of a space management, and understanding the facility aspect of how to manage all of the buildings on campus and off. So having digital floor plans will help with estimating and renovating and other types of utility work that we do in the buildings, and helping to assess the amount of custodial services that we require, because that's all the public corridors and spaces. So it's been a real great journey. We're excited. The campus is excited. It's going to be user-friendly. It's going to be available 24/7. So our business officers, who are our partners, they will be able to access the system at any time they would like, whether it's right after a change that they can track, or if they want to wait till maybe a fall update. So it's going to be really well suited for what we need, and that's the resources on the campus itself to help us with the space management and the data tracking, so that we can have leadership view it and understand what's going on with the campus space and make some major decisions that way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Probably gonna have more questions for you in a little bit, but moving on. How do I get one? I love this slide. It's like, ooh, I want what Jill has. How do I do it?
Yeah. How do you get one? I mean, I think Jill talked a little bit about how that conversation started at DU, right? And what maybe prompted that move in that direction. And some of you may have similar experience or starting on that. But how do you get one? And I think that, I included a couple of different bullet points here and considerations. There is certainly kind of that first consideration that's not bulleted here, and that's establishing the need and the support and the funding, right, or at least the interest to explore that within your institution or organization. But assuming that you're moving in that direction, things you have to think about are system requirements. So, to get an indoor GIS, you need to have a system, right? You need to have the architecture and the software in which to do that. And so there are different ways in which you can implement the GIS. If you're a university, there may be a good chance that you already have that on the instructional side of the house, and maybe you also have it on the administrative side. So in that case, right, it's you leverage existing infrastructure that you have. Maybe get some additional licensing, right, and you've kind of cleared that hurdle. If not, right, that's something that you can look into. And if you don't currently have any existing relationships with a GIS provider, we can help you with that. Put you in contact with the people that you need to, but you do need to have kind of that structural architecture in which to implement an indoor GIS. So there's things to think about there, and we can talk to you about that if you're interested. The second thing is data considerations, right? And this can be the part that is most variable across clients, is your data, right? Do you have data available to use? Do you have floor plans? Do they exist at all? Are they PDFs? Are they CAD drawings? Do you have BIM files, like a Revit file, that sort of thing? Are they up to date? What's the condition of them? That's kind of on the building side. How clean are they? And then also your related data, right? So it's one thing to get your floor plan in so that it accurately represents your built structure, but that's not the only data that you care about, right? There's other data that you want access to and you want to engage with in your system. Well, where is that coming from? And what state is that in, right? Is it clean? Is it ready? So there's a lot to think about from a data perspective, right? That goes into understanding what it will take to stand up an indoor GIS. Other things to think about that I've lumped together here are objectives, priorities, audience, timeline, resources. These go into any project. It's not unique to an indoor GIS implementation, but what are your objectives, right? If you don't have those clearly identified from the get-go, you'll find yourself down a couple different rabbit holes, right? Trying to chase what that is. So I think being clear about what you're trying to accomplish is important. Establishing some priorities, because you may, just like our poll, you may be interested in wayfinding and space management and asset management. Well, what's the priority, right? Especially if you're starting from ground zero, so you know where to focus your time and effort. Understanding your audience, right? Who are the primary users? Jill has a great handle on that, and we'll hear more about it in the example, but she knows who the audience is, right? Who are the decision makers and the leaders that care about the report out and what they're doing with it? Who are the boots on the ground that are, doing the data collection or verification? That's very important to understanding how you design and implement your solutions. And then timeline and resources. To me, that sort of transitions into my last bullet there. Who can help? Half joke, spoiler alert, it's us. We can help. This is an area of focus for LandTech, but the general answer there is, right, vendors can help implement a system, right? And oftentimes that is a uh, a function of timeline and resources, right? It's a big lift to, it can be, depending on a lot of the previous considerations. And some organizations do have the, GIS staff, a wonderful GIS staff, and if they have the time and capabilities, they may be able to handle it on a DIY basis. And then, some organizations may not have that staff, or maybe, they have other responsibilities. And so if the timeline is short enough and the lift is heavy enough, oftentimes having a partner to help support you, both in kind of guiding the strategy and the approach, as well as executing, helps you when you've got limited resources and maybe an aggressive timeline. So those are just, my thoughts on what do you have to think about, how do you get one, and that's it. I don't know, Jill, if you had anything else to add there before we get into the you're talking a little bit about your project.
Yeah, I just think that it does really matter if you have a GIS staff, even if it's just one person that understands the concept of GIS, that can help you along with the system so that you don't need as much education. I did take the class, it was very good, but we do have a GIS technician that's helped us considerably. And we have quite a few drawings. Most of them are in Revit. So that's been an easy fix. We have had to update them, but it does take some time, so plan accordingly. And building related data sources. We just the other day spoke with one of our maintenance and operations managers, and he had a whole list in Excel of all of the places for the valve shutoffs and the water shutoffs. And that's how they managed that. So our leadership wants to view that on an actual map and a location so that in case of an emergency, our technicians can shut the system off, and even in certain zones, so that if it's a research building, they can only shut off a certain portion of it and not affect all the other data research spaces. So that's really critical in a research institution. And it just knowing your objectives, which we wanted a fundamental space management system, which is the source of truth, so that all of our other systems tie into it. So all our room numbering is current with all of the different software systems, and there are other systems on the campus, so or in your industry. So it's best to talk with those IT people and just know your audience. Yes, I've been around for a while in the higher ed, so I know who to identify, our business officers, our users, and to kind of keep an eye on who's using the system, who's asking questions. So that, and you have to respond to them. You take that serious so that they know that you're serious. And the timeline is critical for this project because we abandoned our last one and we need to do another survey this year. So we're working towards that goal.
Excellent, thank you both. I think we got about 8 to 10 minutes, maybe a little less, to talk about the specifics on the project, and look forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, we only have a couple slides here to talk about the project, but we'll go through it quick enough so that we can have a little time for Q&A at the end. So, Jill's mentioned a couple of different specifics about the project, but this is, we're doing the ArcGIS Indoors implementation at DU. I mean, very early on, I heard over and over the source of truth, right? And so we've kind of hung on to that space use source of truth tagline for this project, and it's really helped steer us in the right direction as we go through it. Ted, if you go to the next slide, I'd like to, Jill has provided a little bit of background here, but Jill, if you just take a minute or two, give us a little context about the project, and then we can talk a little bit about our approach and what progress we've made.
Well, the project is going along quite well. We did specifically state what we wanted contained in the inventory and on our drawings and so forth. So that's been easy for LandTech to take and start analyzing and putting schemas together. We're starting out with a pilot project, which is 4 buildings, which is a very good exercise because it kind of gives you some time to get that information together. Some of these buildings are rather large. And so getting an accurate database inventory for the rooms is critical. We have quite a few buildings for the campus. We have 2 campuses, one in urban Denver, and the other one is at the Kennedy Mountain campus, which is up north outside of Fort Collins. So we had to kind of expand our thought process and understand both campuses. We had some challenging experiences. We had the administrative challenges from the last system and educating leadership on what we needed in a space asset management system, and they understood that. And we took in consideration the kind of negative feedback we got from our user groups on the last survey. So we had to improve it. And there was just a gap in the survey results. So we didn't really feel our data was valid. And so we are bringing that back around. We're leveraging our results. So we are constantly measuring what looks appropriate for the buildings, assessing the room inventories based on the floor plans, based on field surveys, based on building manager feedback. So it's a better, friendly environment. We have included the entire team on the campus, not just facilities, but the leadership, all of the different agencies, the finance side, all of that. People that do, the controller's office does an equipment inventory. So we've taken some information from them. So it's really kind of a big project, but it's going to be very adaptive to the environment on a campus, because there's a lot of deadlines, a lot of activity going on, both with budgets, with student enrollment, with all of the going on with student services. So business officers really need time to work on an inventory, not just in a specific amount of time. So I think that the system so far has been very, very well received, and we're excited to see the end product.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Go ahead, take us to the next one. Just a brief overview. So this is our approach to the project, right? We've done discovery. That phase is just about wrapped up. And in the same time, we're doing our pilot project where we're building out prototypes to get kind of initial feedback. And based on that feedback, we'll go into data migration and full development. I want to call out here specifically, Jill has an awful lot on her plate. In addition to implementing with us in the project, is taking the opportunity to go through and validate all of the building data, right? So that includes walking the buildings, doing field surveys, updating any of the drawings or 3D models to make sure that they are up to date prior to importing to the system. And I mean, that's just, you know, bad data in, bad data out. So she's smart enough to say, let's make sure it's right when it goes in the first time, so that we just have to maintain good data going forward. And after the full development, we'll roll it out, just like Jill mentioned, for the fall survey. And I included a note here. You know, our approximate timeline is about 8 months, and it's pretty aggressive given the size of the implementation and the additional development that we'll do. But that's just for context. Go ahead, Ted, take us to the next one. And I'll just hit some high points on the progress to date. So like I mentioned, Jill's done a lot of building data validation. Discovery phase is near complete, a lot of stakeholder meetings, summarizing the trends. So that's some added value, right? Having some folks help you with meeting out to meeting with a cross section of your stakeholders, employees, staff, what have you. You get a sense for what's going on campus, right? And where a heartache is and what really is important to a wide group. We've imported the pilot data. We've begun our prototyping, extended the data model beyond the out-of-the-box data model to make sure it meets Jill's needs and DU's needs. And we've got our conceptual solution architecture complete. That's that little picture on the right-hand side. You know, there's some out-of-the-box functionality and applications with ArcGIS Indoors to do all the things that Jill wants to do and use this as her main space management system. We're going to use our expertise to build out additional content in maps, applications, and automated workflows to make sure that it can do the number of different things that she wants it to do. Go ahead, Ted. Just a couple of takeaways. I'll hit them quickly. I'll invite Jill to add anything to it from her perspective, and then we can wrap up and save a little time for questions. But my big three are, you know, and I said it earlier, Indoor GIS, different benefits for different people, right? And so if you're interested in it, ask around. I bet you there's others that are interested for same or different reasons. And that's to your benefit, because that could mean you've got cross-functional support across your organization to implement this, right? And so if leadership is hearing from all different areas that, hey, this would be helpful for us, you know, that just improves your case for an Indoor GIS, and also means that you've got potential for future growth. So in Jill's case, you know, this is focused on space management. We know already that we've got a long list of future enhancements for other benefits so that this system organically grows and benefits the organization. Discovery is an adventure. We've met with a lot of folks and we've had some surprises, right, Jill?
Right.
You know, but there's a lot of value in that discovery, you know, and so think of it as an adventure and make sure you take in all of that insight. And the last one is power the pilot. So sometimes we do projects where a pilot is a precursor to a full implementation and kind of a full contract to go all in. Sometimes, like in this case, it's the proving grounds, right? We're going to do the whole project, but let's really give you the 4 hardest buildings and let's prove out this thing and make sure that we you know, stumble across anything in the beginning so that when we do the full implementation, it goes smoother. So sometimes that's, you know, those are the approaches to the pilot, but it's always a beneficial approach. And we always recommend it because we think there's lots to be learned there. And it's kind of an easy first step into the world of Indoor GIS. So those are my 3 thoughts about kind of the takeaways. But Jill, curious if you have anything, you know, given the fact that our project is in progress here, but we spent a lot of time together. So anything you want to add before we go to questions?
Well, I highly recommend including all of your stakeholders in the process because people will feel like their questions and the answers are valuable and part of the system. So that helps them use the system and not feel intimidated by it or afraid of it. So good communication with your campus is essential. Forming focus groups along the way so that people can interact with the system and you can get some valuable feedback from them. And I would highly recommend doing a pilot project because it does open up your eyes to various issues with buildings and with the data generation and gathering, which you can then use to understand the total scope of the project and how many resources will be needed. But overall, ArcGIS Indoors will save on the resource end of it. So it does save time and energy on a lot of different levels. And it will be in form so that new generations of workers will always know what's going on with the data and how it's been updated and so forth. So it's kind of archives it.
Excellent. Power of the pilot. Gonna remember that. Everybody should remember that.
Yeah.
So I think we've got one more quick poll, and I see a couple of questions are already in. So just out of curiosity, has anybody, started a parallel journey to what Jill and the University of Denver have been doing? Just a quick sanity check at the end of our session. Again, appreciate everyone joining us today. We've seen a couple of people ask, yes, of course. We will be sharing a link to the recorded version. So if people say, hey, I really want to share this with my colleagues, so that will be made available along with a handout version of the deck. So not to worry. You can watch the replay if you want to.
Just two quick takeaways while we're waiting for the
Sure thing.
questions. Two things that Jill said during the discussion that struck me. First thing she said is that we're dealing with the built environment, and the built environment is constantly changing, which we all know. Keep in mind that this is a living document that's created. This is not a static solution. As you change whatever implications you have or additions that you have for your indoor GIS, that changes with the system. So it lives with the changes that you make. The other thing that Jill brought to light was the water shutoff, the example of the water shutoff valves and how they have a spreadsheet of where their water shutoff valves. And that's great. Most of our clients don't even have that extensive of an inventory. But if you have two technicians and you have an emergency where you have to get to a water shutoff valve, one technician, I say, go on and it's in that spreadsheet of where that valve is located, what valve it is and where it's located. The other technician, go on to the Indoor GIS and take a look at the map and see what's close by and where the valves are. Who's going to get there first? The person that pulls out that spreadsheet or the person that shows up that visual element of the floor plan in the map and sees where it is?
Really good observation, Chris. Thank you. I think the person that says we have a great indoor GIS system is also the one that said I wrote the book. That being said, it's good. It's good to see that we've got some honesty with not even close. Collecting data, researching, about a third. That's great. Not quite ready to pilot, but we've begun the process. Definitely want to talk to you guys. We are definitely bouncing up on time. We've got a few questions. I'm going to do some rapid fire and see what we get. Are the room types driven by the NECS post-secondary FICM manual? Oh my God, that is second.
We use the FICM use codes.
Thank you so much, Jill. Wow, we've got I'm going to skip the two anonymous ones because I'm a little bit nervy that we need another hour for those, but can you expand on your automation plans? That's the biggest challenge. The floor plan changing constantly. So part of what you were talking about, Chris, is how do we make sure we keep things in sync, whether it's through a building control system or security or moves as and change or all that? How do we do that?
Well, a quick example is depending upon the client's needs. We've recently been working with one client that wanted to locate all of their fire extinguishers so they can monitor the annual inspection of their fire extinguishers. We put together a quick app for them so that they can individually go around their particular facilities, their floor plans, locate where those fire extinguishers are within the app, which will add it into the GIS database, and then attach that to the facility management work order system to update their annual reporting on their fire alarm, on their fire extinguishers. Just a quick example of what can be done to quickly update your information within the plan. Even there are even indications for changing walls and that type of thing can very quickly be updated within your Indoor GIS platform.
Got it. Thank you, Chris. We got time for one last question. Are you using Indoor GIS as the system of record for space, or using another CAFM or IWMS solution? For Jill, you get the last word.
Yeah, we're using it as a system of record, and our CAFM system actually feeds from it because the CAFM system oftentimes is not maintained with accurate room numbers.
Excellent. There are a few questions we didn't get to. We are at time. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. Special thanks to Jill. Appreciate Chris and Derek with LandTech sponsoring the IT community in today's session. We'll get follow-up information out to you right after the holiday. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thanks,
Jill.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.